everybody. Welcome to interview number 14 in our exciting new series, My Real Life Relationship with a Narc. Today, I have Kushinda with me. She describes herself as a 40-year-old mother of a 4-year-old, and she's here to discuss the importance of paying attention to the red flags that you see, not ignoring them. And she also wants to focus on the importance of making sure you don't tell a narc too much of your business and how they will flip it around and use it against you. So I thought that would be a very, very important warning because we have a lot of ladies. I'm always on you about telling men too much of your business. So you don't want to listen to me, maybe you'll listen to Kushinda. So let me bring her on. Hey, lady, what's going on?
Hi, Deborah. How are you?
I am fine. I'm glad you're here and
Me too.
looking forward to hearing what you have to say. So
hmm
start by, let's talk. I mean, I said what you wrote. Is there anything else you want to kind of add to that to let people know a little bit about who you are today?
Well, yeah. So yes, I'm a 40-year-old mother, but my background was in fashion design and garment construction. So when I lived, I'm originally from Sacramento, and then I
Oh,
moved.
homegirl.
Yeah, so I moved back here from New York. I worked in the music and fashion industry. So my last client that I worked with was Erica Badu for the Soul Train Awards. And so when I moved back to Sacramento, my whole plan was to try to kind of bring it back into it. Like there's a lot of creative people that are out here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so my goal when I came back to Sacramento was to kind of build a better relationship with my mom and then kind of cultivate my career out here. So that's a little bit of my background. And then I had um, my son when I was 33. Um, so he's 4 now. So we've just been working it out as much as possible. So yeah.
Well, he sounds
So
cute.
yeah, he's a cutie pie. Um, but I've been watching a lot of your series, and they actually have helped me a lot through even my process of healing. So I'm really glad that you were able to start this like podcast where people could actually tell about their life experience and how to, be aware and look out for certain signs. So
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm just happy so many women were, brave enough to come on and talk like that because, a lot of times people feel a lot of embarrassment and ashamed
hmm
of themselves. And I know it's a struggle, but I think part of getting past this is accepting, okay, well, that was who I was then. And that's how I thought then. And those are the mistakes I made then, but that's
yeah,
not me now. And,
hmm
just kind of encompass all of those aspects of yourself into who you are because it helps make you the strong person that you are today.
right.
Every lesson is just something that's going to help you get to the next level. So you guys are all just walking tributes to that.
hmm
So let's talk about, so when did you meet your first narc, or was this guy, you're talking about your son's dad?
Yeah. Well, actually, like when I came back to live with my mom, that kind of opened up the door for me to be exposed to narcissism more. I
Hmm.
was molested at 3. So I was, and my mom was I got molested by my stepfather. So my first interaction with an actual male wasn't a healthy one.
Right.
And so with him doing that and how he basically kind of made me, he pretty much was very abusive. Like it was just like, if you tell anybody, I'm going to kill you. So I didn't really feel safe until I was like 7 years old, until I finally did tell my mother that I was sexually abused by him. And she went through the whole process of um, taking him to court. He eventually went to jail. But my mom was a single parent. She was raising 3 kids. So she wasn't really actually could be there and be as nurturing as I would have wanted her to.
Right.
Um, so there was a little strain in our relationship when I came out here. But prior to that, I was actually I was in a 7-year relationship before I met my son's father, which is the narcissist. And that was a healthy relationship. He courted me. I met his mother, his family. We were together for 7 years. Extremely supportive, but I also got with him at a very young age, and I still wasn't healing with my own internal damage that I've experienced.
Right.
Um, so even though I was like really pushing for my creativity and getting into design and in fashion, there were still parts of me that I needed to work on. So when I came back here, um, and kind of being exposed to my mom and trying to be vulnerable with her with that, and then meeting my son's father, who was also had his own business, I was kind of in a catch 22 with in the healing process because I didn't know who he really was. He just saw me as like this artistic person that he can kind of feed off of, and we started to. It was like originally it started with me trying to get my garments and my clothing into a store, and so
Oh, I
we
was going to
knew.
ask you what kind of business he had. So he had like a retail store.
Yeah, he had a boutique.
Okay.
And so when I came out here, I was looking to get into doing more wardrobe. Um, and so a couple of people had led me to his shop, and there was this like, oh, there's this black man. He has his own business, very successful. You should go check him out. And so I went up there, and it. So I introduced myself and showed him my portfolio and everything. And it just so happened that we had a mutual friend that I went to elementary school with, and so they went to college together. So from there, we kind of like we were talking, but not really dating. He was kind of asking advice on photo shoots and things of that nature. And then I was still trying to deal with the challenging things with my mom. My mom has PTSD and severe recurring depression. And so I was trying to get to know her and then heal from, because she still had like anger and resentments and stuff because of what had occurred to me as a child too. So there was a lot of things that I was trying to relearn about her. Um,
Right.
so
Oh boy.
yeah, so it was a lot. So when I met him, and when I had left my previous relationship, I was just like, um, I knew how a man should treat me. Like, I knew that I wasn't supposed to be called out in my name. No man was supposed to put their hands on me, and like just overall level of respect that I had in my prior relationship. I just kind of assumed that every man came in that form. Like my brother is a very stand-up guy. The man that I was with previously was, and even though when I was going through my adult life, I would always be very picky about the types of men that I would choose prior because of the things that I've experienced.
Right.
Um, I didn't want to, and then I had like my sister and siblings having like multiple kids and stuff like that. So there were certain things that I've like would be aware of, so I wouldn't make those decisions. Um, anyway, so when I met him, he was just really like had a lot of charisma, extremely smart. Um, Graduated from UC Davis, like all the the bells and whistles.
The
The
checklist. Chick, chick,
Yeah,
chick, chick.
pretty much. Everything your mama tells you you're supposed to be looking out for, that's what you're supposed to have. Um, so there are some things that like, so when I met him, so we started dating, and he told me his living situation. Um, at the time, he was living with roommates, and I was residing with my mom at the time, and so I remember the first time that we went out on a date together. He uh, he had like we went to this fashion event, and then after the event, he like was trying to put me in, like open up the door, and then he made an advance at me, like he kissed me. So I was just like, I didn't take anything aback by it. I mean, like I'm not, it's not like I wasn't attracted to him and vice versa, but it was kind of like a little aggressive for me. But I kind of brushed it off, as all women do when we don't try to like hurt a man's feelings, I guess. And then
We try to be nice. We want to be
yeah,
nice.
yeah. So then from there, like we would do projects together, and he would ask me for advice for my services, and I would be like, okay. Well, the first thing that he did was he told people that me and him were in a relationship, and he didn't have a conversation with me about it. Um,
Wait, so
so
he just claimed you without any conversation with you, whether you liked it or not.
yes, he did.
Okay, all righty.
Um, and I found out through someone else, and they were like, "Yeah, he's saying that you're his girlfriend." And I'm just like, "Well, wait, we didn't discuss this." And and then when I not confronted, I asked him about it, and he was just like, well, I really am attracted to you, and I want to be with you. And I was just like, oh, that's sweet. And once again, my mind state was still in my past relationship, so I wasn't really thinking that a man was trying to either be manipulative or try to control me, or certain keywords. Like I remember he would say like he liked to be in control, and I was just like, okay.
Oh, he
And me
flat
come,
out would come out and say that.
yeah, he said it. He said it twice, I believe. And the
Oh,
thing is like me coming from New York, like, and being in the fashion and music industry, everyone has kind of like control issues, like because everyone is doing when you go to New York City or when you are in LA or you're there for a purpose. So it's like you're there to work or be in your career. So like I didn't take it as it being in that way. I thought he was just taking it in control of like how he does his business and things like that, but not in a form of being in control in a intimate relationship with someone.
right. Okay, I see what you mean.
So
And a lot of women would be flattered by that.
yeah,
They
and then I
feel
and
like
then
they
I
were desirable and all of that.
yeah, and I thought that too. That's why I was like, oh, that's sweet. Okay, well, he finds me attractive and that, but it was still kind of like one of them small red one of those small red flags. Um, and then we continued to keep dating, and then I remember even the first time we were intimate, he had said something about my body, um, and
Something good, something negative, critical. What do you
it
mean?
was something negative and critical. He was trying to say that I had like a little pouch in my stomach. Um, I'm 5'9", 150 pounds, so I'm like a very athletic build, and I was never. And then I did a little bit of like um, I did image consulting and modeling and all of that stuff. So I'm very much in the creative field in the genre. So like art is like I don't body issues and stuff like that. I never really had those type of things. But he was just
And 5'9", 150 pounds is not big at all.
no, it's not nowhere near. Especially when he was 350 and like 5'7". These are
Get out
short,
of
stocky.
town.
Yes.
I'm thinking he's like an Adonis the way he was trying to come
No,
off.
no,
He's looking like a
he
weeble. Ain't got the nerve to be talking about somebody. Oh my God.
yeah. So I used to get into these like arguments with him. Like, are you really talking about me like this? Like, I can't believe you. So I started to have to get really protective in my relationship with him, which I didn't feel like my past relationship wasn't like that. Like, I felt like I had
Right.
to always protect myself in having a conversation or like even with my body. So I had stopped talking to him after he said that to me, and we were intimate that one time, and then I stopped talking to him for like 6 months um, because of that one statement. And then,
Smart.
yeah, so, but I still made some mistakes with still allowing him back in my life because I have a child by him. Um, and so he had reached out to me again, and then he was just like trying to flatter me and was like, I've been dating other women, and you're the one that I really want to be with, and you're on my mind. And I'm just like, okay, I'm I've been in Sacramento. I'm came back from New York. I was just like, I guess I was still trying to like work with the dynamic with my mom, which that was really challenging because she, um, when I was staying with her, she was just, there was a lot of things that was happening. Like she was taking the keys and hiding them, and like she was just getting really verbally aggressive sometimes because of her having bipolar tendencies. So there would be things where I wasn't prepared to um, mentally handle. Um, so I kind of almost, in a sense, kind of tricked myself to be um, just to want to be able to have somebody around who I could just like hang out with. So he was kind
Mm-hmm.
of that individual. Um, and then also too, like I realized that there were similarities as far as his upbringing and mine in some way. So I guess I became, in a sense, kind of like trauma bonded with him because of the way that he was treating me. Um, um, so so then like all this stuff started coming out. Like everybody started telling me that he was like, because he's in um, the clothing business, so he was always doing shows and stuff like that in Sacramento. So a lot of women were telling me, they're like, "Oh, he's a player. You know, he deals with a whole bunch of women." And I was just like, "Okay, well, that's his past. I can't really determine who this person is off of their past, because I've met people who've had the worst lives and they've become great, you know what I'm saying? So I couldn't
Right.
go off of that level of judgment until a lot of things started turning on me. So when at one point I would put my stuff in his store and he wouldn't give me the money for the things that I would sell. Then any type of projects that he would ask me to do with him, when it would become to like doing design or anything, he would I would tell him like, okay, this is how much it would cost, and he's like, well, why would you charge me? I'm your man. And I'm just like, well, I can't pay my bills with you being my man. Like you're asking me
Right. I
about
mean,
my
right. If you're gonna start paying these bills, then yeah, then we can do that.
yeah, and then it started to get even worse because then he would tell, like whenever things wouldn't go his way, he would tell me that he would have people copy my work that were other designers. And then I had a gentleman that was he was a seamstress. He was sewing for me, and so I had told him like, this is my son's father. I was like, yeah, I have somebody that's working for me. I didn't feel like there was a need for me to tell him the sex of the person, because I was paying them to work for me and I was paying them for a service. So when he found out about that, he was just like, "Oh, you have this man in your house and you're going to be sleeping with him." And I'm just like, I need this man to actually sew clothes for me. And I'm working a 48-hour shift. Like I was doing costuming, I was doing a 48-hour shift on the weekends, and then I was going, like sometimes I would go to the Cayman Islands for shoots and stuff. So I was busy. So it was just like I was trying to like maximize my time. And then oh, that's one thing I want to point out too. Like anytime that women go through any form of trauma, and if a man ever asks you like what your sexual experience is, or what your first sexual experience is, I just implore women not to even tell um, anyone that. That is up to you and your higher power, and you go through therapy and you work on that process on your own, or finding some, a good group of women, or you know what I mean, any type of counseling, instead of telling someone that you're first dating, because that was something that's where I was talking about where I got trauma bonded with him, is because he asked me what my first experience was, and at that time I was trying to deal with my mom and us building this relationship, and that was kind of the main focus was that, me being molested. So when I had told him that, he was just like, you know, I'm really sorry that that was something that was wrong that happened to you. And, you know, if that ever happened to my daughter, because he has a daughter, you know, I would kill the person, right? So I remember maybe it was like a year or two when we were kind of on again, off again together. He had said that to me, like when we were intimate together, and he was like, he was pushing me to like a limitation that I didn't want to go sexually. And so I had told him to stop, and he was just like, well, you should be accustomed to this because you got molested. And I was
No,
just like,
he didn't. Damn it, no, he didn't.
yes, he did.
Girl, what's his name? I'm about to go get in my car. I'm going to ride the sack and have me a shooting party.
Yeah,
No, he did not say that to you.
he did. He did. And the crazy thing about it is, Deborah, because like when I was in New York, I did this
Ooh.
whole like purging video. I talked about it. Kind of, it was just stuff for me to heal for myself. So when he, and I felt like I had already worked through all of that stuff. So me talking about it, right, is not a big deal to me per se, but not to the point to where if I'm telling you my most vulnerable thing that I've experienced and then you flip it on me, like, don't do that. So,
Oh,
um,
what a slimy dog.
yeah. So then from there, little things started to come out. Like uh, he would he would just say slick stuff, and it used to be so jarring. Like would always like be like he was knocking the air out of me. Um, and so I started to, you know, and then he would constantly break up with me. And that was another thing. And I'm just like, well, and then he would pop up at my house. So it became very like um, abusive. And then like if I would not help him with any of his projects, then he would show up at my house and be like, you know, I really need you and I need your help. And I'm just like, you know, I know I'm all over the place, but I really like how you are and how, you know, supportive you are. And a lot of the people from the fashion community started like to come to me because I was like really promoting myself and trying to like uh, just push myself for my career. And at any time, it's like if I would go out of town, he would accuse me of cheating, and then that would be his excuse of why he would do it, or he would say that he was going to go sleep with somebody, and then and then I would get upset, and then he would just be like, "Oh, I'm lying. I'm just playing with you." And so one of my other girlfriends had told me that I should do a background check on him, which is I think a lot of women should do that too, unfortunately, especially if you decide to really start being with somebody or you're moving them in with you or they're attempting to try to move
Mm-hmm.
in with you, um, or they immediately start telling you that they love you and they need you in their life and you're just like the air that they can't breathe without
See the
them.
air I breathe, girl. You my air.
Like what? Um, so anyways, so
I'm just
fast
not
forward to
believing this
that.
dude.
Yeah, so like anyway, so I ended up pregnant. I had conversations with him. I was just like, okay, I didn't want to be on birth control because a lot of that was making me like hormonally having me weird changes and all of this stuff. And like, I knew how it affected your body. And I had told him, you know, I did want kids. And he was like, yeah, I want to have kids with you. Um, but he also, there was other things that he used to do. He used to use his daughter as a pawn too, which really hurt me and bothered me too, because he would always, I guess at the time he was going through a divorce with his wife, or they were going through a custody battle. So he would tell me that he was going to let me meet his daughter, and then he would start an argument with me. So I would get my hopes up to meet her and um, like try to plan stuff to do with her, because I used to work at the Boys and Girls Club too, so I know how to do like art projects and stuff. So I would be like getting stuff for her, and then he would start an argument with me, and I was just like, "Can you not?" And then how he would reel me back in is he would show me like videos of her like riding her bike outside or something, or like uh, playing, and I would just be like, why are you doing this? Like, you're really mean. And he was just like, well, I really want you to be a part of my family and all this stuff. I'm just like, so it was just always this level of like mind games.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I ended up, so anyways, I ended up being getting pregnant. I told them what my beliefs were. I didn't believe in abortion. I didn't want to, I grew up in a single family home, so I was very adamant of me not wanting to like have my son grow up without his father in his life. But there was all of these other things that I had to find out in the process. So he didn't want me to have my son. Um, he was very vocal about that. Um, and in that process, I felt a lot of guilt and shame for making the decision to actually keep my child. Um, and so my mom was like, well, we're gonna, I'm gonna step in and I'm gonna provide for him and we're gonna do it. I'm gonna help you. And so my pregnancy was really bad. Um, he was really verbally abusive. Uh, my nephew at the time, who was 18, had got murdered in
Oh.
Chicago. So, and then I had preeclampsia, and I believe part of that was because of the stress of my
Mm-hmm.
relationship with him. And then when I was pregnant, it did get physical to where he so he didn't want no one to know I was pregnant by him at all. And so he was just like, don't tell nobody you're pregnant by me. Um, keep my name out of your mouth and all this stuff. And in hindsight, what I found out was the reason why is because not only was he in another relationship with another woman, he was exiting out of, so it was like he was dating like three women at the same time that no one knew. And so
Oh
he,
boy.
yeah, so he was leaving one relationship to try to see if he could be with me. And if it didn't work out with him, then he had like a backup plan. And so what he would do with his daughter was he was kind of using her as leverage to get women of affluence to have him move in with him, and then he would just basically get them for their money, pretty much. Um,
And I'm like, okay, he's 350 pounds and 5'7". How does that work?
well,
Because I'm
he's
telling you, he couldn't have got close enough to me to smell my fart. I'm just like, no, you little roly poly bug, get away from me.
well. He like, I guess, the bells and whistles and the education. I mean, he's an alpha. Like, I mean, he was a part of a fraternity. Like, so he knew how to like move in those type of circles, and so in each and and I think even for me, like, I became so like aggressive in our relationship, especially me coming back from New York. So I wasn't,
Yeah,
there's a lot of things that I was catching, but I was just like, I don't really have time to really kind of deal with it because I was so focused on my career.
right.
But I wanted to have someone that I could have some support. And I had that in my past relationship. So in this process, like even with my ex that I was with, he had a heart problem, and then
Oh,
he had he had passed away like maybe 2 years ago. But he was like my best friend, and the only
oh,
reason why I had chose to leave that relationship was to come out here, and also kind of like I had got with him when I was young, and then wanted to have a relationship with my mom. If
right.
that wasn't those choices and decisions, I would have stayed with him. Um, and but that's not what it happened. So then with my son's father and being with him, and I had a really bad birthing experience, and I had opened up a boutique um, because I felt I felt bad for having my child. And so I was just like, well, maybe this will work. let me renovate this whole boutique for this man so I could show him. Because then it went from me standing up for myself to me actually lowering my standards. So I just started lowering myself and lowering my value even more. And um, so I ended up opening a boutique because I made a choice to have a child, and I was trying to uh, give him a store because that's something that he said he wanted. Uh, and then I was just like, well, I'll just take care of my son. And so that's when I had found out that he was living with another woman. Is On Christmas Eve, uh, I had I had to get some keys made for him, and then he was in my the store that I had renovated, and then I had saw all these text messages and emails about a woman and him looking for another house together.
Ooh,
He had
he just
told,
was doing the most.
yeah, he was, and
Oh,
he had told me he was staying with his brother, and then in Fairfield, but then the address was in Sacramento. So I drove up there, knocked on the door. He opened it, and he was like, "Oh, I'm just staying here in my girlfriend's house," and like, and I'm just like, no, he said his ex-girlfriend, not his girlfriend. And I just went off. I was like, "Are you kidding me?" And he was just like, "I just needed to have a place to stay." And I was like, "You told me you were staying with your brother." And so like, so I lost it. So I grabbed all his stuff and was like, throwing it out of the boutique and everything. And I had contacted his ex-wife, and I was just like, I had to let her know, because my whole thing was like, I'm pregnant. I knew that she had a child. I didn't want them to like meet up out of the blue
mm-hmm.
at different ages. And I was just like, I think it's important for your kids to know their siblings. So that created a whole nother issue. So I pretty much like lost a lot of myself. I was dealing with postpartum, um, the fact of me having my first child by this man who I, in a sense, kind of allowed. There's a lot of things that um, we end up allowing because of whatever lack that we might have, like
Right.
the abandonment of me not having my father, or me having my son not have his father in his life. And even the fact of like, people were like, well, you should go after him for child support. And I was just like, the type of his mouth and his mind, and how he would talk to me even throughout my pregnancy, or even with my son, uh, was growing. The things that he would say, and I would keep trying. I was like, okay, well, let me just let him try to just get accustomed to being around him and stuff. And it would just be one little slick thing that he would say out of the other. And then just recently, last year, I was at a venue trying to like sell some of my product, and then his ex-wife and her friend comes up to me, because his ex-wife never even said anything when I introduced myself or anything like that until like 3 years. Like when we had that incident, it was like my son was like maybe 6 months, and um, and then she saw me last year, and actually her friend told me that he had another child.
After you had your son?
No, before.
Okay.
Which that storyline is basically his, because he has a total of 4 kids. His daughter that I know of, that I've physically met, she's 9, and then his son that I never knew of is 8. And apparently, the two moms ran into each other at the same school. And so she had to tell her, hey, my son goes here and your daughter goes here. So, and they're in the same grade, eighth, 8 and 9 years old. So they're like in the 6th or 7th grade. Um, so there's that. And so,
My goodness. So
yeah,
how is that how things ended? Did you take that? What was the last straw for you?
the last straw with me was that the finding out, well, it was that, and then also finding out the woman that he was with prior to me, because I had to do like all of this background check. Like I was literally going to the courts and like looking up. He had domestic violence cases uh, with all of the three women that I knew of, which was his ex-wife, um, the girlfriend prior to me. Then he was physically abusive to me. So it was a
And
total.
definitely emotionally abusive all
Yeah,
the
he was
time.
emotionally abusive. Like he was abusive with me in my pregnancy. Like that was really horrible. He slammed my head in a wall, and I had ran into the bathroom to close the door. And so he took knives out of my drawer and was trying to like shimmy the lock open. And so finally he wasn't able to open it. And so he had walked off, and then I opened up the door, and he was just like, "Oh, you're coming out." He was like, "I would have hoped that you would have ran into one of those knives." Um, like, my belly would run into one of the knives. And then
Ooh, wee. Mm.
um and so yeah, so so my last straw with him was the finding out about the other kids, and then the fact that like he was lying so much, like even with the woman that he's with now, she's a gynecologist. And so when I found out about her, and then he tells me, he's like, "Well, I'm just only with her for money, because right now he's in the process of going to medical school." So she's pretty much paying for it. Um, and I was just, for me, it's just like, it's just too messy. Um, and it's just women need to just be careful about like men who have other children. What's that relationship like? I didn't have my first child until I was 33. So I had my son fairly older, you know what I mean?
Right.
So, and part of that was because I just had saw like my sister and other female friends of mine who had kids, and had multiple kids, and had different fathers and stuff like that. So I had assumed that I kind of even told myself, oh well, he's a single father, so he obviously knows how it is to raise a child. So if I have a kid with him, then he's going to be this excellent dad. And that wasn't the case.
Well, yeah,
um
that was some amazing leap in logic there.
Yeah, like but that's the thing. Like women, we end up doing. It's like we live in this Disney movie. I have conversations with my friends about this too. It's just like this, you know,
That's an
this
interesting
white
way to
and
put it.
well, it is. Well, it's like this white and this prince that's gonna finally come and save us, and he's gonna awaken us from our sleep, like Sleeping Beauty, or like Snow White, the prince is going to come and save us. But no one says no one talks about what happens after the movie. No one knows if the prince has like an abusive dad, or he's been, he's been molested or anything like that, or if he's a player or a narcissist, or he's, like no one talks about that. So we just kind of think that once we get either the ring or the title, or, or he's showing some level of like control or ownership, that we're just like, we're supposed to just let him lead.
Yeah.
um
Good luck
and
with that.
yeah, and that's another thing too, because it's always the Bible and religion always talks about you should let a man lead you. And it's just like, well, where, if we keep, and then we get condemned by that, because it's just like, you're supposed to go through these ups and downs with your man, and he's supposed to treat you like this. And it's just like, no dude would ever go through half of the things that he puts a woman through. He wouldn't even allow it. Like staying in
Not
relationships while
one. Yeah, you're right. You're exactly right.
so um so that's kind of like the gist of what I've experienced. And like I I just really try to focus on like being a good mom to my son, and trying to work on just healing myself and being very aware, and not falling for just what a man says or even what a man does. Like it it takes a whole lot of time and energy to deal with them or
Can you
even want to.
sum up as we wind down here? Can you sum up, say, I don't know, maybe a list of, say, 3 things that you think are the most important things that a young lady should watch out for? Some things maybe that you didn't really pay that much attention to, you want to warn
um,
them about?
uh, be aware of jealousy, um, you know, of how you look, or if they're trying to like change you, or they make like little snide remarks about your your accomplishments, because some men become jealous of that and they want to be in competition with you, so they'll try to sabotage your life. And I've experienced that, especially with him, because he was extremely jealous. Uh, and he would sabotage things in our relationship. So it would be like he would be like, "I want you to be successful, so you shouldn't have let what goes on in our relationship affect you." And that was like, what? That doesn't make any sense to me. But um, so there's that. Um, keep anything, like any type of trauma that you've been through, like leave that to up to you, God, or the universe, or go to therapy. I wouldn't say too much about discussing that with your mate. You know, yeah, you just keep that to yourself, because you just don't want someone to play off of that. And you can be trauma bonded by those things, because then it becomes, you get triggered and you go back into that adolescent mind state. And that's what happened to me. Like I went right back into what occurred to me when I was 3. And um, and because of that, that actually had to, that had made me have to like go back into therapy and look at some other ways on how I can build boundaries up. And third one is um, just really, to be honest, like you don't really need a man. Like get accomplish everything that you want. Know what you like to do. Enjoy enjoy whatever you like to do, whether it's writing, singing, or dancing, or doing podcasts. Don't let anyone in your relationship stop or hinder that. They're supposed to help you grow, not weigh you down. And if you ever feel like your relationship is a weight, cut it. You'll be better off, or you'll be dragged for
Like,
years.
girl, tell it. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, you got to let
Yeah,
it
that's
go.
like women do want to feel like they just feel like they're obligated to sacrifice themselves for men. They sacrifice their time, their money, their bodies, their energy,
Hmm.
their homes, their futures, their goals, their children. I mean, just their money. I mean, everything. They just will put everything on the line for a relationship that's not even that great.
No, yeah, that's true. And then they'll and then on top of that too, women are not your competition. This is what I even learned in this situation, because all when I found about all of these other women, I reached out to them and everyone was so afraid to have a conversation with me. And at the end of the day, we get so mad at each other that we not even looking at the actual culprit. So he get
Mm-hmm.
to run off and do whatever he chooses to do, and we have all of these social economic problems. And it's not me being a feminist or anything like that, but it's just like men do these things and then they feel like they're completely absolved for them. They're
Right.
just like, oh, I can wash my hands and you just deal with it. And then we're kind of left with holding everything, and then we become resentful with other women, and they went through the same thing. And it's just like, why are we in competition with each other? We should be more kind of building each other up, so we can be aware of situations like this. And because not everybody wants your man.
Girl, dude, ain't that the truth?
And obviously if he was honest and forthright about it, we wouldn't even go through those situations either, because I didn't know about none of these other women until it was brought to my front door.
Right.
I
Well,
wasn't going
they're
out.
usually very good at manipulating people to make sure that everybody stays quiet and,
Mhm.
you know, away from each other. So they always want to know where you are and where you're
Yeah.
going and who you know, or why you going there, stuff like that. Because then that's where they can monitor how close you might be getting to finding out, and then they can, do something that run interference.
Mhm. Well, yeah, that's true. And then also, women are so emotional, so we'll tell everything, and we don't know how to like strategically maneuver in situations or even be like, well, why is he asking me that? You know, we just kind of be like, oh, word salad.
I don't tell them nothing. Like, where you going? I'm going where I'm going.
Right.
What? You ain't my daddy. You don't need to check in with you. I say stuff
Yeah.
like that. But
Mm,
basically that's saying I'm not telling you. But, I
right.
say it in a just a little assy way. But
Right.
yeah, I'm gonna tell them nothing. I just don't. And I'm glad you reiterated that because you were able to provide a firsthand example of why that's so important.
Hmm.
And I talk about it in the videos very often, but now you've given them a real life example of what exactly happened to you when you did that. And so that'll help bring it home, I think, make it more realistic to a lot of the young ladies that'll be listening to this.
Yeah, it's really important because they will play off of any type of vulnerability, even if you've been abused in your past relationship by your other mate. Like that stuff, don't say anything. I
I
mean,
agree.
you can say it to heal, you know what I mean, and take ownership and be like, I'm not a victim anymore, and this is what happened to me. But you don't have to do that in your relationship with somebody that you don't really know. You don't
Right.
know his mind state. You don't know if he's certified crazy. So,
Yeah, he be trying to do an instant replay and whatnot. No,
yeah,
no.
absolutely.
Well, girl, this has been wonderful, and I want to thank you for, like I said, for coming on and share your very unique story. And I think it'll be very helpful. Your warnings are great. I think it'll be very helpful to a lot of young ladies. Your eyes will probably be bugging out as much as mine were when you were when you was talking. I was like, what? Yeah,
I know. I mean, I'm sure there's more stories to tell that women have, but we be so afraid to talk about them because we feel like ain't no one's ever been through it, or they're not ever going to go through it, and it can definitely happen. You just got to keep your eye out. So,
that's right. Well, thank you, and enjoy the rest of your evening with your little lovely bunny boy over there, little
okay, I
cutie
will.
pie. Okay,
Thank
I will talk to you real
Okay.
soon. Bye
All
bye.
right.